Corrine Brown stone-faced as she emerges from the federal courthouse, a convicted felon. The former congresswoman stunned that a jury found her guilty of 18 out of 22 federal fraud and corruption charges. Her attorney now planning to file for a new trial.
This is just part one in a very long process, and there are a number of motions that we intend to file.
Corrine Brown went home just a couple of hours ago, still a free woman pending her sentencing. The 24-year veteran Democratic politician and former member of Congress, now a convicted felon.
Following 11 hours of deliberations by a jury, News 4 Jax was the first to bring you the verdict live on air as it was handed down. Brown was found guilty of 18 of the 22 federal charges she faced.
Our team of reporters and legal analysts has been covering this trial since it began nearly 3 weeks ago and giving you perspective along the way. We begin our coverage with Joy Purdy.
Tom, Mary, the biggest, most publicly talked about charge, we're going to go through them very briefly. Count one, the corruption charge. She was found guilty. That, of course, was involving One Door for Education, the fake charity. The mail fraud counts were next. Of the 7 mail fraud counts, she was found not guilty of 2. The rest she was found guilty of. Then the wire fraud counts. Of those 9 wire fraud counts, she was found not guilty of 2. The rest guilty. And all 4 tax fraud counts against her, Corrine Brown was found guilty. Now, once the verdict was read, the trial was over, the jury was dismissed. Corrine Brown and everyone else involved in this case were allowed to talk to the media. Not a sound from Corrine as she left the federal courthouse. But just minutes later, she did issue a statement through her attorney, which reads, I will read that to you, quote, "While I respect the jury's decision, I disagree with it, and I want to make it clear that I maintain my innocence. I did not commit these crimes, and I intend to file a motion for a new trial. I will continue to stand on my record of decades of faithful service to this community and the nation. I have a long record of charitable service to the community, and that will continue even during this process. I want to thank my family and friends for their prayers and support during this difficult time. I ask that you continue to pray for and support me. The fight is not over, and I'm sure you know I will continue to fight to clear my name and restore my reputation." Now, reaction already coming in all over from the political world. For example, we have a statement here from Audrey Gibson. She is the chair of the Duval County Democratic Party. Here is her statement. It reads, "Duval Democrats, as you may have heard, the jury reached a verdict today regarding the charges against Congresswoman Corrine Brown. Congresswoman Corrine Brown's work for her district in the legislature and in Congress will never be diminished by the outcome of this trial. She has been a champion and worked tirelessly for many years." Senator Audrey Gibson, chair. All right, what is next? Corrine Brown has been allowed to go home. Her attorney says she will spend some time with family while she awaits her sentencing, which should be happening in about 90 days. Her attorney, James Smith, he's resting just a little bit. He says he's going to be jumping right on filing some motions. Joining me now, Jim Piggott on the other side of the federal courthouse to talk more about what Corrine Brown's lawyer has in plan next. Jim?
As you had mentioned, it's going to be filing motions because he says this isn't over with yet. He was talking as Corrine Brown was walking out as well. Then we were able to talk to James Smith very candidly. You know, he was saying that a lot of this was a surprise to him. He said they fought hard in this case, and they really didn't know what to expect at this point. But he said, as we'd heard from the Congresswoman's statement, that she's ready to go on. He's going to be filing these motions soon, so we should be seeing something, I'd say, within a week or so. But here's what he basically said about the next step.
And so, you know, I'll be honest, I'm human, and there is an element of sadness and disappointment about the result, concern for my client. But there's an old phrase, and that is, tomorrow the sun is going to come up. It's going to come up for me, and it's going to come up for her. And I still have a lot of work to do in this case, and so I'm going to work hard because we still have the motions, we still have sentencing, and so what's next for me was really the same thing that's next with any case. I'm going to get up tomorrow and keep working hard.
I was hoping to talk to the prosecution in this case, Tyson Duval, the lead attorney there, but they have only issued a statement from the U.S. Attorney's Office, which basically says former Congresswoman Brown chose greed and personal gain over the sacred trust given to her by the community that she had served for so many years. And Duval, we were hoping, would talk to us afterwards, but so far they've not at least said anything at this point when they went up to his office. But again, from Corrine Brown's attorney, he says that she might be able to speak a little bit later, but she's just now spending time with her family. For now, we're live at the federal courthouse out front. Jim Pickett. Joy?
Jim, before you go, quick question for you. Now that this is over, is there a chance that the government could go after other people who were implicated during this trial? Other indictments, for example, Corrine Brown's daughter, Chantrell. She was mentioned many times during this trial. I know you've been speaking with some legal analysts that we have. Any insight there?
Well, on that, at this point, we don't know. And I actually asked Smith about that, if they were worried about that. And he says he doesn't see that at this point, but you never know. You never know what could happen in all of these cases. You know, Smith was talking about, he thinks that they'll come back because he was citing other congressional cases where other politicians have been found guilty, but then later on, nothing had happened. He's hoping that that's going to happen in this case, at least with the new trial.
All right, Jim Pickett, thank you very much. Jim, covering this trial from the very start inside the courtroom. Also inside the courtroom, Lindsey Gardner, who is here with us now. An emotional day. Lindsey, Corrine Brown, like we've never seen her.
Well, Joy, in my exclusive I-Team interview with Corrine Brown in the weeks ahead of her trial, she told me defiantly her tombstone would not say felon. But today, a jury largely from Jacksonville disagreed, convicting her 18 times over as a felon. And Corrine Brown was stunned silent.
Corrine, I know you're heartbroken. What do you want to say to your supporters?
Corrine Brown exited the federal courthouse in silence. She was surrounded by her daughter, defense attorney, and supporters as she rushed away from downtown, all to escape what was arguably the worst day of her life and the worst defeat she had ever experienced. This is an artist rendering of the former Congresswoman, once the queen of the local Democratic Party, reduced to a shell of her former self, staring straight ahead as federal judge Timothy Corrigan read the verdicts around 2 p.m. this afternoon. The 12 men and women that made up the second jury sat there uncomfortably as the judge read each and every count. It took several minutes to complete. The entire courtroom was silent except for one person who could be heard crying. The silence, a stark contrast to a lively and defiant Brown, who sat down exclusively with the I-Team in the weeks ahead of her trial to say she was not guilty. But a federal jury, largely from Jacksonville, disagreed. I asked her then about the prospect of serving time.
Are you scared of going to federal prison?
No, I'm not. I'm ready. I want it over.
But what if that means a conviction?
No, listen, what happens when failure is not an option? What if you are not guilty? What if you're innocent? I believe in the system. I'm going to be tried in a courthouse that I built.
And that is something she said constantly throughout this trial, even on the day of her indictment, pointing to her good works all across Jacksonville, including this courthouse. So just the ultimate juxtaposition there, that is the same courthouse where Corrine Brown met her ultimate fate of learning she is a convicted felon, likely going to federal prison. We have spoken with a former federal prosecutor who tells us Brown will likely be sentenced to somewhere between 5 to 7 years in prison. Of course, as you heard Jim mention, her attorney does plan to fight that. Joy?
Lindsey, since you were in the courtroom, I got to ask you about this strange little blip that happened. We all thought, as well as everybody up there, that when the judge came into the chambers, he was going to answer a question that the jury had. But instead, all of our relaxed stances kind of went to attention when we found out, whoa, there's a verdict.
Yeah, relaxation to tension is exactly also what we witnessed Corrine Brown and her team experience. So they all walked in, they had been at lunch, they thought they were coming back to hear this question about wanting some more testimony, which again, remember, legal experts say the longer this drew on, the more likely this is going to end in a mistrial. So I really think she had gotten comfortable with that notion. So when they came in, you know, her daughter was putting lotion on, they were chatty with everyone, we were able to speak with them, and then all of a sudden we heard that fateful knock at the door, which in the past has meant the jury had a question. But all of a sudden the judge came out and said, hey, I was here to answer their question from earlier today, but instead, folks, we have a verdict, and everyone will come back in 15 minutes and I'll read it. And you saw her team just begin to circle the wagons, and they could tell, obviously, the sound of a verdict meant mistrial was off the table. Corrine Brown left for those 15 minutes, grabbed some tissues, and they were tissues that she ended up needing. Joy?
All right, Lindsay, thank you so much for that view inside the courtroom. Also, folks, those of you listening to us now, I want you to picture you're a supporter of Corrine Brown's. You've been in the courtroom every single day throughout the entire trial, from jury selection all the way until the end. How do you think you would feel hearing all of these guilty verdicts? We're going to go now to Scott Johnson, who's joining us here as well at the federal courthouse. Scott, you spoke with some of her supporters.
They were devastated by this news, particularly how she was treated by the public, the court, the media, as she came out the front door right here to a swarm of cameras right after she found out about the conviction. She was escorted to a car by security, but the scene was not pretty. Talked to supporters, they were pointing to the fact that Corrine Brown helped get this federal courthouse built, the one she was just convicted in. The supporters I talked to just devastated by the whole ordeal.
I'm hurt, not because she was found guilty, because it's just about whatever the system says it is. I accept that. But the fact that they couldn't even give her the courtesy or the decency to let her come out the back door, come on, she built this place, she named it. It's a shame in Jacksonville today. We have no decency, no respect for black life in this city.
And that was the thought here from some of the supporters downtown, although I did speak to a number of supporters who say they feel Corrine Brown may have gotten a fair verdict here. They couldn't really comment on the legality of this. One other group I spoke with a veteran who says Ms. Brown has a lot of support from veterans in Northeast Florida, and they believe, this man did that I spoke with, that support from veterans will help in her sentencing phase. They say the support will somehow play a role in the court proceedings here. We're live downtown at the courthouse. Scott Johnson, Channel 4, the local station.
Scott, thank you. And a reminder, there are still two other people as part of this party, two other co-conspirators. Ronnie Simmons, he, of course, was Corrine Brown's former chief of staff, and Carla Wiley, she was the president of this fake charity, One Door for Education. Both of them making deals with the government. Both of them will be sentenced. We have yet to hear when that date will be set. Now, coming up at 5:30, a lot of you, our viewers, have strong feelings that have had since the beginning of this trial. Janice Harris will be joining us. She's going to be talking to some of you about your opinions, and we hear from another congressperson. Kent Justice will be joining us for that. He has got a statement from Ron DeSantis. He spoke with him. You'll hear from that as well. That is all coming up at 5:30. For now, our team is live outside the federal courthouse. Tom, Mary, back to you.